Have you ever found yourself at the end of the day, wondering where all the hours went? You sat down to do something important, something that mattered to you, but you opened your phone for just a second. A few hours later, you've scrolled through miles of content, watched countless short videos, and your brain feels like a scrambled egg. The motivation you had is gone, replaced by a vague sense of anxiety and exhaustion. You tell yourself you'll be more productive tomorrow, but tomorrow becomes a repeat of today. This was my life. I was trapped in a cycle of cheap dopamine, constantly seeking the next little hit of pleasure from my phone, from junk food, from endless entertainment. My focus was shattered, and my motivation was at an all-time low. I felt like a passenger in my own life, so I decided to do something extreme. I decided to quit everything. For 7 days, I embarked on what's known as a dopamine detox. The goal was to starve my brain of the intense artificial stimulation it had grown addicted to, in the hopes of resetting its reward system. I wanted to see what would happen to my motivation if I took away all the easy escapes. This is the story of my 7-day journey into boredom, and how it completely transformed my relationship with my own mind. Before we dive into the experiment, let's quickly talk about what dopamine actually is. It's often called the feel-good hormone, but that's a bit of an oversimplification. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter that plays a crucial role in motivation, learning, and pleasure. It's the chemical that makes you want to do things. When you eat a delicious piece of cake, your brain releases dopamine, telling you, "Hey, that was good, let's do it again." It's a fundamental part of our survival, driving us to seek out food, water, and social connection. The problem is, our modern world has hijacked this system. Social media, video games, sugary foods, and endless streaming content are engineered to give us massive, unnatural spikes of dopamine. Your brain, in its effort to maintain balance, adapts to this constant flood. It downregulates its own dopamine receptors. This means you need more and more stimulation to feel the same level of pleasure, and everyday activities, like reading a book or going for a walk, start to feel dull and unrewarding. Your motivation plummets because the effort required for real-world tasks seems enormous compared to the tiny effort of getting a dopamine hit from your phone. This can lead to a vicious cycle of procrastination, addiction, and even feelings of depression and anxiety when you're not getting your fix. I was deep in that cycle. My ability to focus on my work had withered. I would get a great idea, feel a surge of excitement, and then immediately get derailed by a notification. The deep, sustained motivation required for long-term goals felt impossible to access. That's why I knew I had to go cold turkey. The rules for my 7-day detox were simple, but brutal. I based them on the principles outlined by Dr. Cameron Sipa, who first popularized the concept as a method to manage compulsive behaviors. For 1 week, I would abstain from all major sources of high dopamine stimulation. First, no phone for anything other than essential calls. That meant no social media, no YouTube, no news apps, no mindless browsing. Second, no computers, except for offline work. Third, no television, no movies, no video games. Fourth, no music with lyrics, only ambient or classical sounds if absolutely necessary for focus. Fifth, no junk food, no processed sugar, no caffeine. And finally, no mind-altering substances of any kind. The idea wasn't to get rid of dopamine entirely. That's impossible, as your brain produces it naturally. The goal was to let the overwhelming cravings subside, to allow my brain's reward pathways to reset, and to force myself to find satisfaction in low-stimulation activities. I wanted to rediscover what it felt like to be bored, and to see what my mind would do when it couldn't escape into a screen. I told my friends and family I'd be offline. I stocked my fridge with healthy food, bought a few physical books, and prepared for the worst. The first 2 days were pure agony. It felt like every cell in my body was screaming for a distraction. My thumb would twitch, reflexively reaching for a phone that wasn't there. The silence in my apartment was deafening. I paced around like a caged animal. Without the constant input, my mind felt incredibly loud and chaotic. All the anxieties and worries I usually numbed with scrolling came rushing to the surface. I experienced a pounding headache from the caffeine withdrawal, and a deep sense of irritability settled over me. I felt restless, anxious, and profoundly, deeply bored. I'd pick up a book, read a single paragraph 5 times, and retain nothing. My mind was a hungry ghost, searching for its next hit. I'd stare out the window for what felt like hours. I tried to meditate, but my thoughts were racing too fast. It was in these moments that I truly understood the depth of my dependence. These devices weren't just tools, they were my pacifiers, my crutches. Without them, I felt exposed and inadequate. There was a moment on the evening of day 2 when I almost gave in. The craving for just 5 minutes of mindless scrolling was so intense it was a physical sensation. But I resisted. I took a cold shower, went for a long, aimless walk in the dark, and eventually fell into an uneasy sleep. Day 3 was the turning point. I woke up and the crushing weight of the first 48 hours had lifted slightly. The headache was gone, and while the boredom was still there, it felt different. It was less of an aggressive, clawing feeling, and more of a quiet, empty space. And in that space, something new started to grow. I picked up that same book I'd struggled with and found myself actually reading a full chapter. The words started to form images in my mind. It was a slow, gentle pleasure, nothing like the explosive hit of a viral video, but it was real. Later that day, I found an old journal and started writing. I filled pages with my thoughts, my frustrations, my observations. It felt like I was clearing out the clutter in my own head. I went for another walk, but this time, I wasn't just trying to escape my apartment. I noticed the details around me, the way the light filtered through the leaves, the sounds of the city, the faces of people I passed. My senses felt sharper, more alive. I started cooking my meals from scratch, focusing on the process of chopping vegetables and the aroma of spices. These simple, analog activities started to feel deeply engaging. My brain, starved of its usual junk food, was finally starting to appreciate a healthy meal. The motivation wasn't for a grand goal yet. It was a simple, quiet motivation to just be present in my own life. By days 4 and 5, the transformation was undeniable. I woke up feeling a sense of clarity I hadn't experienced in years. The mental fog was gone. When I sat down to do some offline work, I was able to enter a state of deep focus that had previously been impossible. The urge to check my phone had almost completely vanished. It was replaced by an urge to create, to learn, to do. The boredom that had been so terrifying was now my greatest ally. It was the blank canvas on which my ideas could finally take shape. I found myself organizing my closet, planning out future projects, and reading for hours on end. I was enjoying activities that my overstimulated brain would have previously dismissed as boring. My tolerance for delayed gratification was increasing. I was no longer a slave to my impulses. The biggest change was in my motivation. Before, motivation felt like something I had to chase, something external I had to find. Now, it felt like it was coming from within. It was a steady, reliable energy source, not a volatile and fleeting high. I felt in control of my attention for the first time in a very long time. On days 6 and 7, I felt like a different person. I was calmer, more centered, and more energetic. I had finished 2 books. My apartment was spotless. I had a clear plan for my work for the next month. But the most profound change was my relationship with myself. By removing all the external noise, I was forced to listen to my own thoughts and feelings. I confronted my anxieties instead of numbing them. I realized how often I used distractions to avoid dealing with my own life. As the experiment drew to a close, I wasn't excited to jump back into my old habits. In fact, I was a little scared of losing this newfound clarity. On the morning of day 8, I turned my phone back on. The flood of notifications was jarring. It felt loud, needy, and invasive. I looked at the social media apps and felt almost no desire to open them. The endless scroll seemed pointless and unappealing. The 7-day detox had fundamentally rewired my desires. So, what did I learn? First, my productivity and focus skyrocketed. The ability to work on a single task without distraction is a superpower in our modern world, and this detox proved it to me. Tasks that I had been procrastinating on for weeks suddenly seemed manageable. Second, my appreciation for simple, low dopamine activities increased dramatically. I rediscovered the joy of reading, writing, and just being in nature. These activities now feel restorative, not boring. Third, I have much more control over my impulses. I can now recognize the feeling of a craving and choose not to act on it. That feeling of control is incredibly empowering. It's important to say that a dopamine detox isn't some magic cure, and it's not a medically recognized treatment. It's a behavioral experiment, a form of cognitive behavioral therapy you perform on yourself. It's about becoming aware of your unhealthy patterns and consciously choosing to break them. You don't have to lock yourself away for 7 days to experience these benefits. The real lesson is about intentionality. It's about taking back control from the algorithms and apps that are designed to keep you hooked. You can start small. Maybe try a digital sunset, where you turn off all screens 2 hours before bed. Turn off all non-essential notifications on your phone. Schedule time into your week to just be bored without any devices. Try replacing one high dopamine habit with a low dopamine one, like swapping 10 minutes of social media for 10 minutes of stretching or journaling. This 7-day experiment showed me that my lack of motivation wasn't a character flaw. It was a symptom of an overstimulated brain. By giving my mind a much-needed rest, I was able to reconnect with the natural, sustainable motivation that was there all along. It taught me that the most productive and fulfilling life isn't about chasing the next high. It's about cultivating the quiet focus to do the things that truly matter. The motivation you're looking for isn't at the bottom of an infinite scroll. It's waiting for you in the silence.